The sky above the junk world was always gray, always full of smoke and ash. Nothing green grew here. No birds sang. No wind moved without carrying dust and the stench of burned metal. This was the end of the galaxy's trash, a place where the broken and useless were dumped and forgotten. Old war machines, crushed drones, scrap metal. And sometimes, even people. They all landed here, among the twisted metal and sharp wires. A young alien girl named Zelra lay still. She had no legs. Her lower body ended in scarred skin and metal stumps. The overseers had taken her legs when she tried to escape once. "You are no longer useful," they told her. "You are not breeding material." That sentence never left her mind. Zelra had once been full of hope, like many others of her kind. She believed she could be more than just a body made for labor or children. But her dreams were torn apart the day they chained her down and cut her legs off. Now she lay in the cold scrap pit. Weak, hungry, and shaking. Her skin was blue-gray. Her eyes dull from exhaustion. Every breath she took was slow and painful. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is it. Maybe I will die here." And no one would care. Above her, a large piece of broken ship hung dangerously from a rusted crane. It creaked, ready to fall at any moment. Zelra didn't flinch anymore. She had no strength left to be afraid. Then, suddenly, the ground shook. Zelra blinked. Her vision was blurry, but she saw a shadow fall over her body. It wasn't the crane. No, this shadow moved. A figure stood tall against the smoky light. Something different. Something alive, hey? The voice said, deep and human. "Are you breathing down there?" Zelra didn't answer. She tried, but her throat was dry. Her eyes locked on the stranger. He was wearing a dust-covered coat, his face partly hidden behind a breathing mask, but his eyes were calm, strong, and full of something she hadn't seen in years. "Pity name's Jace," he said, slowly kneeling beside her. "Didn't expect to find someone alive in this heap." Zelra tried to sit up, but her body refused. Her mechanical stump sparked slightly. She lowered her head in shame. "Just leave," she rasped. "I'm trash." Jace looked at her. "Hey, den around the pit." "Funny," he said. "I see trash everywhere. But you're the only thing still breathing." He scanned her body with a small device from his belt. A soft beep told him what he needed. Vitals low, dehydration severe, injuries old, he muttered. But alive. Zelra turned her head away. "Why do you care?" Jace didn't answer at first. He simply pulled out a small water pouch and held it to her lips. "Drink first, talk later." Zelra hesitated, then sipped. The water felt like fire and ice at once. Her dry throat burned, but she kept drinking. When she finished, she whispered, "They left me here because I'm broken. I have no legs, no use." Jace tilted his head. "Well, good thing I've got a few spare parts." Zelra blinked. She thought she misheard him. Jace stood up and looked around. He began pulling metal sheets, broken sleds, and straps from the junk pile. In minutes, he built a simple platform. Carefully lifting her onto it, she was light to light, bones and skin. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer, just pulled the sled behind him, dragging her across the scrapyard with slow, steady steps. The sun was setting behind a cloud of ash, but Jace kept moving. "I don't like throwing away good things," he finally said. Zelra closed her eyes as tears rolled down her cheeks. Her chest hurt, not from pain, but from something else. Hope. No one had looked at her like that since before the overseers took her legs, before they called her useless, before they erased her worth. The sled bumped and shook, but she didn't complain. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. And in that moment, under a sky full of smoke, Zelra felt something new growing in her chest. Not just hope, but a spark. Asterisk, the small ship looked like it hadn't flown in years. Rust covered the outside. The engines were patched with old plates, and wires dangled like broken arms. But to Zelra, it was a castle. Jace dragged her inside carefully. The inside of the ship was warm compared to the cold scrap field. It smelled like oil, metal, and food. Not fresh food, but real enough to make her stomach ache with hunger. He placed her on a soft seat covered in blankets, then crouched down and looked into her tired eyes. "You'll be safe here," he said quietly. "Nobody comes out this far." Zelra didn't reply. Her body was still shaking, but her eyes moved slowly, scanning the strange man, Jace, the human who came from nowhere and treated her like she wasn't trash. Jace walked to a corner and pulled out a large metal case. It was full of mechanical parts, arms, legs, fingers, joints, cables, all neatly arranged. His hands moved fast but gentle, like a mechanic who respected the machine he was fixing. Zelra watched in silence. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Why do you have that?" Jace glanced at her. "I used to build battlefield prosthetics," he said. "Help soldiers walk again after wars chewed them up." He picked up a thin-legged frame, polished in silver, then turned to her. "You're not the first person who needed parts?" Zelra flinched slightly. "I'm not a soldier." "No," Jace said, kneeling beside her, "but you're still a fighter." Her eyes stung with tears she tried to hide. No one had ever called her that before. He started cleaning the metal stumps where her legs once were. Every touch made her wince, but Jace worked carefully, whispering short warnings before each step. This might sting, or just breathe for a while. Only the sound of soft tools and quiet breathing filled the room. "I don't get it," she said at last. "Why waste your time on me?" Jace paused, not looking at her. "Because the galaxy throws away too many people who still have something left inside." Zelra turned her head, staring at the ceiling. "They said I was too broken, that no one would want me, not even for breeding." Jace set down a tool and met her eyes. "Then they're fools," he said. "You're not broken, Zelra, just hurt. That's different." His voice didn't shake. He believed his words, and for some strange reason, she wanted to believe. Them too, the first leg clicked into place. A soft vibration ran through the metal as it connected with her nerves. Zelra gasped. Her fingers curled around the seat. "Just let your body adjust," Jace said gently. "It's learning again." Then the second leg followed, and the same cold shock filled her, but this time she didn't cry. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. After a few minutes, Jace offered her his hand. "Try to stand." Zelra looked at him like he was mad. "I haven't stood in years," she whispered. "I'll catch you," he replied. Her hands were shaking as she took his, slowly, carefully. She pushed herself up. The legs trembled. Her body swayed. But she was standing. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She looked down at herself, standing tall, alive. Tears fell from her eyes without warning. She laughed, a strange, broken laugh, then cried harder. Her hands covered her face. Jace stood close, saying nothing. But he didn't let go of her hand when she finally sat down again. Exhausted, she looked at him and said, "You don't know what this means?" He gave a small smile. "I don't have to." Later, he gave her warm soup from a tin can and wrapped her in clean blankets. The ship was quiet, floating above the scrap field now, hidden under camouflage nets and sensor blockers. That night, as Zelra rested on a soft bed, she whispered, "Thank you," Jace replied, without turning. "You're welcome." Silence filled the space between them, soft and peaceful. Then she asked the question that haunted her all night. "What happens now?" Jace looked over his shoulder. "Now you heal. Then you decide what kind of life you want." She stared at the ceiling, those words echoing in her mind. A choice, her own choice. It had been so long since anyone gave her one, in that small, broken ship with a man who carried spare legs in a bag. Zelra's future, once dark and cruel, began to glow again, not with fire, but with something quieter, possibility. The next morning, Zelra sat on the edge of the ship's metal bed. Her new legs were smooth, silver, and strong, but they didn't feel like hers yet. She stared at them, unmoving. As if afraid they might vanish if she blinked, Jace was in the other room, working on something with sparks and humming tools. He had barely slept, but he didn't complain. His hands moved with purpose, fixing old systems, welding new pieces to the hull. Making the ship ready, Zelra gripped the edge of the bed tightly. She wanted to move, to walk across the room without help, but the fear was loud in her chest. What if she fell again? What if the legs broke? What if Jace saw her as weak? Breakfast, Jace's voice called from the hallway. Zelra didn't answer right away. Her heart was racing. After a long breath, she pushed herself to stand. The legs responded shaky, but solid. She took one step, then another, each one slow and careful. She walked into the small mess hall, barely 5 meters wide, and saw Jace pouring something into 2 cups. It smelled bitter but warm. He turned and smiled. "You walked." Zelra sat down quickly, trying to hide the tremble in her hands. "They work," she whispered. "They're yours now," he said, passing her a cup, "and they'll get better." Every day, Zelra stared into the cup, watching the steam curl into the air. "I still feel not real," she said, "like I'm wearing someone else's life." Jace didn't laugh, didn't joke. He just nodded. "Sometimes, after you've been broken. It takes a while to believe in yourself again." They ate in silence, broken only. By the hum of the ship and the occasional sound of tools clanking in the background, Zelra felt warm for the first time in years. Not just her skin, but something deeper. After the meal, she asked softly, "Can I go outside?" Jace looked up from his tablet. "You can," he said, "but stay close. The scrap field still has dangers." Zelra nodded and slowly walked down the ramp. Every step on her metal legs sent tiny shocks through her nerves. Her balance was poor, but her determination was strong. The wind outside was cold, the ground uneven, but she walked. She walked past broken ships, dead drones, and twisted beams. She stopped near a crushed statue, maybe once part of a war memorial, and touched it gently. Her reflection stared back at her in the metal surface, tired eyes, thin face, silver legs. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Who am I now?" Her past felt like a heavy shadow. She had been nothing but a number, a slave, a body with a purpose assigned by others. Now she had legs, freedom, and a strange man who didn't ask anything from her. But inside, the broken pieces still rattled. Later. That evening, Jace showed her how to control the legs better. "Focus on your hips, not your feet," he said. "The signal starts there." Zelra tried again and again, falling more than once, each time. Jace helped her up without a word of judgment. "Why do you care so much?" she asked finally, sitting on the floor, breathing hard. Jace looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Because someone once helped me when I was broken too." Zelra blinked, surprised. "You?" He nodded. "War messes everyone up. I lost friends, lost purpose, almost lost myself." She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "What brought you back?" He smiled slightly. "A little girl I saved from a crashed colony." She held my hand and said, "You're a good man." That was enough. Zelra didn't reply, but her heart ached. Was it possible that one kind word, one act, could change everything? That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was tired, but her mind ran in circles. She thought about her sisters who never escaped, about the overseers who laughed when they threw her into the pit, about the voice inside her that still whispered she was worthless. But another voice, quieter and warmer, whispered, "You walked today, and that voice sounded like her own. The next morning, she walked without holding onto walls. Her steps were uneven, but she didn't fall. Jace watched from the side, arms crossed, face unreadable, when she made a full lap around the cargo room. She turned to him. "I want to get stronger," she said. He nodded. "Then let's start tomorrow." Each day after that, she trained, walking, running, climbing. She fell hundreds of times, but she kept getting up. Her muscles grew, her eyes sharpened, her voice grew louder, and with every step, every bruise, every breath, a part of her broken spirit stitched itself back together. But still, deep in the back of her mind, the question remained: what kind of life was waiting for someone like her? The sky above the refugee colony was not gray like the junk world. It was blue with clouds and silver rings from the planet's twin moons. The air smelled clean, and birds flew freely above fields of strange plants that glowed at night. Zelra stood beside Jace as they stepped off the ship. Her mechanical legs clicked softly as she walked. She wore a long coat to cover the scars on her body. Her eyes scanned the colony with caution. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. It had been weeks since they left the scrap field. Jace had made a deal with an old contact, a human officer who ran this place where aliens and outcasts were allowed to live without chains, but freedom came with rules. "Don't cause trouble," Jace warned her. "Don't talk to the enforcers unless I'm with you." Zelra nodded, holding his arm tightly. The people in the colony stared at her, some with curiosity, others with pity, and a few with disgust. She heard one whisper, "Is she one of them? Breeding stock." Another said, "Look at those legs, human tech. That's not allowed." Zelra lowered her head, shame rising like a wave. The whispers hurt more than any metal blade. She had escaped slavery, but not judgment. Jace noticed her silence and whispered, "Ignore them. You don't owe them anything." They reached a small metal house with one door and 2 windows. Inside, it was empty but clean. Jace dropped his bag and turned to her. "We'll stay here for now." Zelra walked to the window and stared at the people outside. Children played with floating toys. Aliens traded food and parts. Laughter filled the air, but she felt like a ghost among the living. "I don't belong here," she said softly. "You belong wherever you choose to," Jace replied, sitting on the floor and opening his toolkit. "The question is, will you let yourself belong?" She didn't answer, not because she disagreed, but because she wasn't sure how to believe him. Later, they went to register at the colony center. An enforcer scanned their IDs and stared at Zelra for a long time. "Species?" he asked coldly. "Does it matter?" Jace snapped back. "It does," the enforcer said. "We've had problems with her kind. They're not exactly ... free citizens." Zelra stepped forward, her voice calm. "I'm not a problem. I'm a survivor." The enforcer said nothing, just typed into his screen and handed her a chipped card. "Stay in your zone. No weapons, no breeding." She froze, heart racing. That word again, breeding. Jace clenched his jaw, but didn't speak. He led her outside quickly, his hand tight around hers. Once they were alone, Zelra pulled away. "Did you hear what he said?" she asked, her voice shaking like I'm still property. Jace turned to her, eyes filled with quiet anger. "He's wrong, and if anyone here touches you, they'll answer to me." She looked away, trying not to cry. She had grown stronger physically, but inside, the old chains still wrapped around her soul. That night, someone knocked on their door. Jace opened it to find a tall alien male with gray skin and sharp eyes. "You brought her here," he said with disgust. "We don't need breeding rejects. They'll attract hunters." Before Jace could speak, Zelra stepped forward and slapped the door shut in the alien's face. Jace looked at her in surprise. She was shaking, but standing. Tall, I'm tired of people calling me that, she said. I'm more than what they did to me. The next day, Zelra signed up for mechanical training at the workshop. The human engineer looked her up and down, then said, "You know tools." "I've lived around metal longer than I lived around kindness," she replied. He grinned. Good enough. Days turned into weeks, and Zelra worked hard. Her hands learned to build, to fix, to create. For the first time, people started respecting her for her skills, not her body, but whispers still followed her like shadows. One afternoon, while repairing a drone engine, she heard two workers talking behind her. She's with the human now, probably trying to breed with him for protection. Zelra turned and threw a wrench at the wall beside them. "Say that again. I dare you." The workshop fell silent. Jace came later that evening. Seeing her sitting alone on the roof, staring at the stars, he sat beside her without saying a word. After a long pause, she asked, "Do you ever get tired of defending me?" Jace smiled softly. "No, I do," she whispered, "but not from the outside. From the voice inside me that says they're right." He reached for her hand, held it gently. "Then we fight that voice too." Together, Zelra leaned against him, her silver legs dangling over the edge of the rooftop. The stars above didn't judge, didn't care what she had been or what others thought. And in that quiet night, she made a silent promise to herself she would never wear chains again. Not on her body, and not in her mind. The rain came slowly that evening, soft drops falling on the colony's rooftops. Zelra sat by the window, watching the trails of water slide down the glass. The lights outside flickered in the dark, painting the streets in soft blue and gold. Jace was working again, tuning an old drone engine on the floor. His hands moved with purpose, but his eyes often drifted toward her. "Something on your mind?" he asked without looking up. Zelra didn't answer at first. Her fingers rested gently on her stomach, not because of pain, but because of thought. Deep thought, heavy and confusing. Do humans ever think about family after war? She asked softly. Jace paused, set the tool down, and sat back. "Some do," he said. "Some can't stop thinking about it. Others run from it forever." Zelra turned from the window. "What about you?" Jace met her eyes. "I don't know. I guess I always thought I wasn't the kind of man who'd get that chance." She stood slowly and walked over to him, her metal legs silent on the floor. "What if I told you I might want that chance too?" He blinked, unsure what she meant. "Zelra." She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. "You gave me more than just legs, Jace. You gave me a life again." He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back gently. Not out of rejection, but out of fear. "They told me I was nothing, that no one would want me, that I'd never be more than trash." "You're not," Jay said firmly. "Not to me." She looked at him, eyes full of emotion. "Then prove it." Silence. Jace leaned forward, unsure. "What do you mean?" Zelra swallowed hard, then whispered, "I want to have a child with you." The words hung in the air like lightning about to strike. Jace's mouth opened, but no sound came. He stared at her, not with fear or confusion, but with awe. "You mean it?" he asked slowly. Zelra nodded. "I know it sounds foolish, after everything, but I want something that's mine. Something they can't take or label or break." Jace took her hand this time, and she let him. His fingers were rough, from tools and war, but his touch was gentle. "I thought I'd never be enough for anyone," he said. "But if you believe I can be a father, I'd be proud to try." Tears formed in Zelra's eyes. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too." He whispered back, "But let's be scared together." That night, no one outside. Their little home knew what changed between them. The colony kept sleeping. The rain kept falling. But inside that quiet room, two broken people chose something powerful. Hope days passed, and Zelra visited the colony clinic. The alien doctor looked surprised, but didn't judge. He said her body had healed well, that with the cybernetic legs. Carrying life was possible, unusual, he said, but not impossible. Zelra held the test chip tightly when she left the clinic. Her heart pounded in her chest. Back home, Jace sat at the table. Waiting without asking questions, she placed the chip on the table and nodded once. Yes. He asked, his voice trembling. Yes, she replied, smiling through tears. I'm pregnant. Jace let out a breath and reached for her. They held each other for a long time, saying nothing, just feeling everything. But news in colonies spreads fast. Within a few days, the whispers began again. She's pregnant. With a human. Wasn't she a breeder reject? People stared as they passed, some with disgust, others with disbelief. One woman even shouted, "She's using him to stay here." Zelra turned slowly and walked toward the woman with calm steps. Her silver legs gleamed under the sun. Didn't survive torture and scrap pits just to beg, she said coldly. I walk now because a man believed in me. And I'm carrying his child, not for safety, but for love. The woman said nothing, just looked away. Back home, Jace rubbed her back gently as she sat by the fire. We'll leave if you want, he said. Find somewhere quieter. No, Zelra whispered. I don't want to run anymore. She touched her stomach softly. This child will be born free, in a place where people saw me stand. Not crawl, Jace nodded. Then we'll stay. And we'll show them all what strength really looks like. As the fire cracked beside them and the stars lit the night sky, Zelra finally felt something she never thought possible. Whole asterisk, the wind howled across the edge of the colony, carrying dust and silence with it. Zelra stood in the open field near the outer fence. Her hand resting gently on her stomach, she watched the horizon carefully. Something inside her felt wrong. The colony had been quiet for weeks, too quiet. The whispers had stopped. The stares had grown distant, and people had begun to accept her presence. But peace in a place like this never lasted long. Jace came up behind her, his boots crunching softly on the dry soil. You feel it too? He asked. Zelra nodded slowly. Something's coming. That night, while the colony slept, a ship pierced the sky like a burning dagger. It was black, long, and marked with the sigils of the overseers, the same ones who had thrown her into the scrap pits long ago. The ship didn't land gently. It slammed down near the storage yard, and dust shot into the air. Panic began to spread through the colony as lights flickered and sirens wailed. Zelra grabbed Jace's arm, her voice shaking. They found me. Jace didn't hesitate. He pulled her inside and opened a hidden panel under the floor. Go, hide. Now, no, she whispered. Not again, Zelra. She stood tall, her silver legs locked and steady. I will not crawl underground while they burn another place down. Not while I have legs to stand on. Outside, armored overseer. Troops marched through the gates, shouting commands. We're here for the defect. One screamed, she belongs to us. People ran, hiding behind homes and market stalls. But no one pointed at Zelra. Not this time. Some had begun to believe in her. Jace loaded his old rifle, checked his tools, and strapped gear to his chest. We fight together, he said. Zelra nodded, her hand brushing the edge of her belly. We fight for our future. The overseers sent a broadcast through the colony loudspeakers. Return the stolen breeder unit, or the colony will be purged. Zelra stepped out into the square, her voice sharp and fearless. I'm not a unit. I'm not stolen. I'm free. From the top of the wall, a hunter captain aimed his weapon at her. You were born to serve. You failed. You were disposed. Now you're reclaimed. Jace stepped beside her and raised his weapon. You'll have to go through me, gladly, the captain replied coldly. The attack began with a flash of light and a thunderous sound. Explosions rocked the outer walls, but Jace had prepared for this. His traps fired back. Mines, auto-turrets, and EMP charges lit up the night. Zelra moved through the chaos like a shadow, fast and fearless. Her legs were no longer tools of survival. They were weapons of strength. She leaped across crates, dodged fire, and struck down soldiers with stolen stun rods. The colonists watched in awe as the woman they once called useless became a shield for them all. Jace fought at her side, using every trick he knew. Every shot he fired was for the child growing inside her, for the future he hadn't dared dream about before he met her. The overseers were brutal, trained, and merciless, but they hadn't expected resistance like this when the leader fell. Broken by a blast of Zelra's rage and fire, the remaining soldiers hesitated. They looked at her. Standing tall, scarred, pregnant, but unafraid. This colony protects its own. She shouted, "We are not your slaves, not your tools, not your numbers." The soldiers dropped their weapons and fled to the ship. The engines screamed as the black vessel rose into the sky and disappeared into the stars. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of fires dying and the slow breathing of those who survived. Zelra dropped to her knees, her strength nearly gone. Jace ran to her side, holding her gently. "You're okay," he whispered. "You did it." She leaned into him, trembling. "I'm still here." The colonists slowly came out from hiding, eyes wide with disbelief. Children stared at Zelra like she was a legend, a warrior mother, a symbol. An elder approached and bowed her head. "You saved us," she said. "You stood when many would have run." Zelra shook her head. "I didn't do it alone that night." They lit a fire in the middle of the square, not to mourn, but to honor. People shared food, stories, and silent looks of respect. Zelra sat near the flames, her hands resting on her belly, feeling tiny movements inside her. Jace sat beside her, tired but proud. "They'll come again," he said. "Let them." She replied, "Next time, we won't just survive, we'll be ready." As the fire crackled and the stars returned to the sky, Zelra finally knew she was no longer just a survivor. She was a protector, a mother, and the beginning of something new. Sunlight touched the edge of the colony as the first rays of morning painted the sky in gold. Zelra stood on the training field, breathing slowly. Her legs, mechanical and strong, moved with precision as she practiced balance and form. The child inside her shifted gently, a quiet reminder that life was growing inside her too. It had been 2 months since the overseers came. They had not returned, but their shadows still hung over the colony like a faded scar. Yet something had changed in the air, in the people, and most of all, in Zelra herself. She was no longer watched with doubt now when she walked through the markets. People greeted her with nods, some even smiled. Children whispered stories about her, calling her the Iron Mother and the Walking Flame. Jace built a new wing onto their small home, adding space for a nursery, a lab, and a resting area for when the child arrived. His hands were always busy, but his heart was always near hers. He checked on her every hour, brought her food, and read old Earth books aloud just to make her laugh. Zelra sometimes stood at the mirror and stared at her reflection. Her body was not what it once was. Her face carried old pain. Her arms carried new strength. And her belly carried something sacred, something no overseer could ever touch. One evening, as the sky turned purple, Jace brought her a gift wrapped in old cloth. Inside was a small handcrafted necklace, a piece of polished metal shaped like a tiny foot, the symbol of a first step. "I thought it belonged to you," he said. Zelra touched the necklace, her fingers trembling. "No," she whispered. "It belongs to her, to the future." That night, she sat under the stars with Jace beside her. His arm rested around her shoulders, and her head leaned against his chest. I never thought I'd live long enough to feel this, she said. Softly, he kissed the top of her head. You didn't just live, Zelra. You rebuilt. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled. I was thrown in a pit like garbage, and now? I have a home, a partner, and a child. How is that possible? Because you never stopped fighting, Jace said, even when you thought you had. The colony began to change too. Inspired by her, more humans and aliens worked together now. The workshop where she had once been doubted now carried her name on its wall. Zelra's Forge, where broken things were fixed, and so were people. She began teaching others how to use cybernetics, how to rebuild lost limbs. Some who came were survivors of war. Others were like her, thrown away by cruel systems that never saw their worth. And in every lesson, Zelra spoke not just about machines, but about something more. You are not your missing part, she told them. You are your will to rise. One quiet morning, Zelra felt the first pain. It started like a whisper in her lower belly and slowly grew stronger. Jace rushed to her side, guiding her to the medical room they had prepared. The midwife came quickly, calm and ready. Zelra gripped Jace's hand tightly, sweat on her forehead. But her eyes locked on his. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, he said, brushing her hair back. But you've been through worse, and this time, it's life, not death. That's coming. The hours passed slowly, filled with breath, pain, and determination. And then a cry, soft and sharp, filled the room. Zelra gasped, her body shaking. As the midwife placed a small, warm bundle into her arms, the baby's skin was soft. With a light lavender tone and tiny fingers that curled against her chest, she's perfect, Jace said, tears in his eyes. Zelra stared at the child in her arms, her heart so full it almost hurt. She's mine, she whispered. Not theirs, not anyone's, just mine. Outside the colony waited. When Jace stepped out and raised his hand, the people clapped and cheered. The child born of war, born of strength, had arrived. Days turned into weeks. And Zelra adjusted to motherhood with wonder and patience. The baby laughed easily, slept in her arms, and reached out toward the sky like she knew it belonged to her. One night, as Zelra rocked her gently, she whispered, they called me useless. They said I would never be a mother. But here you are, little star, breathing, smiling, and proving them all wrong. Jace came in and kissed her forehead. You're not just a mother, Zelra. You're a legend now. She smiled tiredly. I don't care about being a legend, she said. I only care about being her home. Outside their window, the stars shimmered and the galaxy continued to spin. But in one small corner of space, a child slept peacefully in the arms of a mother who had rebuilt herself from metal. Memory and the fire of her will, and nothing. Not chains, not war, not even the past could ever take that away again.